to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by Gemma Hurley and Jed Shepard. How are you guys doing today?
Oh, brilliant. I've just been on Cyberpunk killing lots of people, so that's the win for me.
And I'm good, thanks. I've just subscribed to the Criterion channel, so I'm watching films besides horror for once and just going through some classics.
Jed, you're betraying us.
I know. I'm trying to fill in. I've got some gaps in like French New Wave, so I'm trying to go through.
Of course you do.
I'm trying to go from the start and watch all those films.
Oh, that's so awesome. So for a little introduction here, for those of you that don't know, these two are the writers for this little movie called Host, you may have heard of. It is a award-winning movie on Shudder right now. And if you don't have Shudder and you can't get Shudder, you're in luck, because coming February 2nd, this movie will be available on home media for you to own. I have links down here in the description for you guys to check out. And all joking aside, this is an amazing movie. If you guys have not seen it yet, I strongly recommend you check this out. It's a genre-bending movie, and this could really be the start of something huge. It's already been winning awards, and it's getting rave reviews from everybody that's seen it. An article I seen already put it in the top 30 scariest horror movies of all time. So that shows you the company that this lady and gentleman joined with, and I am lucky enough to have them here to talk about this film that they wrote, as well as their first horror movie. But before we get into the first horror movie, what was it like filming this movie during a pandemic and writing during a pandemic? How was that for you guys?
I mean, Jesus, where the hell do you start? I mean, I didn't know, I didn't know Jed before Host was even a thought in their minds. Like these guys, like Jed and the co-writer director Rob Savage, who isn't here with us right now, they didn't you guys do a prank on your friends because you were just bored in lockdown? And that's kind of how the idea of Host came along.
Yeah, we have a WhatsApp group called Quarantine Movie Club, which I started the first day of quarantine. And that was just to coordinate our friends watching Netflix every day, which films we're going to watch together, what kind of quizzes we're going to do online. And then after about 6 weeks of running out of films to watch, Rob played a prank on our friends. I was in on it, and his girlfriend Kay was in on it. And it was essentially him pretending that someone lived in his attic, and we convinced him to go up to his attic, and a zombie child jumps out and he falls down and dies. And I told him that none of our friends would believe this is real because they're not stupid, and they all believed it. And we recorded it on Zoom and we put it online, and then it went viral. And from that point, we got a lot of interest in making something bigger. But in answer to your question, like, how was it like writing this? Very, very strange, because myself and Rob have been working together making short films since like 2015 to some moderate success, and so we kind of expected that level of success, that a few people would hear about it in certain circles. People might go, oh yeah, those guys made a good film. Never expected anything like this, and adding Gemma to the mix just kind of like filled in our kind of like world, and she's now firmly one of the Quarantine Movie Club members, which means like she's a good friend now. So yeah, for me it's been a roller coaster that just doesn't end. I'm starting to get seasick, but it's it's exciting.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it was very like, I mean, the thing is about Host, I think this is probably, from my perspective, why so many people have potentially connected with it, is because, it came from a place that was real. Like, we were all stuck in our homes. We didn't know how bad it was going to get at that point. We were, all of our friendships were on Zoom. And so we're putting a load of that kind of very authentic texture from our own lives into the kind of backstory of all the characters of Host. Like, the character who's got problems with her boyfriend she's moved in with too quickly, or someone who's had to like move in with their dad. It's just, everyone can relate to that because it was happening to us. And in some ways it's like one of the most, I don't want to blow steam up our arse or anything, but it, like whenever else in history of reality or movie making has a time come along that's so globally resonant that like everyone was doing the same thing, and we were just like, well, let's try and capture that in a way that feels, there was a bad version of Host. It could have been quite like, exactly what all the beats were going to be. It was going to be quite derivative, but we really just wanted to do something that kind of was more about a group of friends who were just, you know, disconnected in this really weird time, and, you know, facing this horror that had kind of infected their homes. And I guess it kind of came out of that. And we only had like 2 weeks to develop the show. Like, I mean, as I said, I'd never met Jed before. It was like, hey, guy, let's develop a movie on Zoom, right? That's a thing. What are we doing? And just like knocking ideas around. And thank God something came out of it that people seem to like, I guess.
And that's the thing, we've got to put it into context. The fact that nobody had done this before. People were expecting there to be a horror film set on Zoom because it just seemed common sense, but no one had done it up until like we'd done it. And if you put it into historical context, like Jem says, this hasn't happened before or since. Something that's kind of captured the zeitgeist. I mean, that really wasn't our intention. We were just making a film with friends. And I think we first kind of realized when the first week when we were getting reviews from our favorite horror sites that like Bloody Disgusting and Dread Central, and they were saying that this is the most important movie since the Blair Witch Project. And then it kind of made me think, yeah, I mean, nothing's really captured lightning in a bottle like this since maybe The Exorcist, Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity. It's really rare that a horror film can do that, but also it's incredibly rare for it to be shot in the way it was, and also British, because when's the last British horror movie that's taken the world by storm?
Right.
I'm not sure when. Maybe the 60s.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, it's maybe the 70s actually with Don't Look Now, but yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and something that I want to bring up too that we've talked about, when you say that this is genre bending like the Blair Witch Project, not just in the way that it's shot, but just the idea, and something we've talked about. When the Blair Witch Project came out, you didn't have Google in your pocket where you could Google and see if this was real or not. They really captured on that imaginative idea of this could be real. And that's what this does. You know, this is genre bending to the point where I think this is something that's going to take off. And it's something that when I contacted you guys to come on, I was super nervous just because I'm a big fan of your guys's. And you guys really did. You said it perfectly. You captured lightning in a bottle. And ever since this movie came out, I've also been calling this a twat knot. So thank you guys for that too. But it's such a fun movie where you could feel a genuine friendship among friends, even to where, and I'm no spoiler free, but when she's like, I sense angst amongst, and she knows that her friend's pissed off. Like she knows that there's an upset, even though she hasn't said anything, you have that feeling of a genuine friendship and people that really care about each other. And that towards the third act of the movie, that becomes really apparent when people risk themselves to go out and do things. But I want this to be as spoiler free as possible, because for those of you that haven't seen it, you need to watch it. That's why I'm being very vague right now. I don't want to give anything away. I promise you it's so much fun because there's a lot of scares to it. There's a lot of anxiety to it. There's a lot of suspense, but you feel a lot of love in the movie too. And you feel a lot of fear, not because of what you're watching, but because of what these people that love each other are going through and what they're seeing each other go through with how much they love each other. Even when they're angry at each other, they will still risk themselves to go and save someone that they love. So it's a very well put together movie, not just a movie that's going to come out and jump scare you every 10 seconds. It has a believable story and a big feeling of realisticness, if that's realism to it as well. So thank you guys so much for bringing this to us. And it's something that we all horror fans have been obsessed with for the last 6 months. So I can't talk about a horror movie in the last 6 months without hosts coming up. So that's the impact that it's having on us in the horror family right now.
Thank you, Ken. That was so well put. And just to reference the cast, and they are all friends, and I think that authenticity is hopefully what people are responding to on screen. They are so talented ladies.
Yeah, that's the best rehearsal. The best rehearsal is like 10 years of friendship. It isn't something you can cast. It just has to be authentic, and that's the thing with found footage movies, and something that we had instilled from the start. This has to be as authentic as possible, and that comes from the people we choose to be in it, the way we go about things, having obviously no music, using their real names, semi-improvised, like Blair Witch. It's essentially the Blair Witch kind of template, and it's the only way to make it work and convincing, and it makes you feel that you are part of this seance, that you're part of the friendship group, that you're just in another window on the screen. And yeah, and I'm glad it's kind of affected you and everyone who's seen it that way.
You didn't just say astroplane, did you?
No. But there has to be alcohol in that drink, though. By the way, Ken.
I'm on lunch, so unfortunately,
okay.
can't do that yet.
Vodka.
Another thing I wanted to bring up about this film, when you were talking about them really being friends, I think that's something that really does come through. You were talking about the authenticity of that. You know, again, I'm not giving anything away, but there are real tears that you feel during this movie, and that real feeling of fear of not, hey, I've known this person for 3 weeks. Let's go get on a boat and talk about how we're the king of the world. This is something you can feel the friendship that these people have had for a long time. You know, even when she's, no spoilers, when she's throwing rocks at her window, let me in, you know, like you can just feel like this is the way they talk to each other. This is the way they are with each other. And it's such a beautiful thing. And even when, you know, when Twatnot comes in, he's like, I get to be alone with a lot of you for now. And they're all so excited. It's so genuine and so real. And I had a blast every 45th time I've watched it. So it's something that does. And another thing about it that one complaint I've gotten is the length. And I absolutely appreciate the length because there's nothing drawn out there. You know, people, I wish it was longer. I wish it was longer. Well, the longer it gets, the more people will start bitching that there's drawn out moments, and there's nothing drawn out about this. You're constantly from the beginning to the end getting punched in the mouth repeatedly.
Yeah.
Amazing.
This is this is the thing, like the 90-minute thing is from the 1920s when like cinema owners needed films to be that long to hit certain quotas, and like we've just had it ever since, just out of nostalgia almost. Now we have streaming, and now people have a lot of things to watch. Things should just be as long as the story lasts.
Yes.
If it lasts 3 hours, it lasts 3 hours. If it lasts 20 minutes, it should be 20 minutes. Things shouldn't outstay their welcome. And we're coming from a shorts world and making shorts. Our attention spans are like very small anyway. So we originally this host was going to be like
The length of the
possibly
Zoom
30
call.
minutes, like yeah, and then we were just like, okay, this is great, and I think Rob was a little bit unsure that we had enough material to fill like 56 minutes, but when the edit came in, and it was way too much. There could have been a 2-hour cut, but yeah, we put in as much as was needed, and people have really responded to it, and it's one of the main things I think that made it go viral, the fact that we've kind of normalized a short movie, and it's not considered a short film, it's considered a feature film. It's
from
it's
a
great.
really geeky, nerdy writer's perspective, one of the things I love about this film is that it really breaks the talking about rules and what we're supposed to do. It breaks all of the rules in terms of the structure of a movie. Like that first whole section is like almost like half of the movie. But that's, usually that's like, your first act and stuff like that. And really that was just because I think it was like something that happened in the edit where it's like, you need to fall in love with these girls before we kill them, basically. But that is just like, but that just breaks all of the rules. And especially that last act as well. Again, no spoilers, but it's very like squashed, it's a very heavy movie. It's like going down a slope almost.
Yeah. Well, again, that structure was invented like in the early 20th century, and like,
and we're supposed to write movies like that now. Like,
yeah,
it's too predictable.
How many movies?
That's what's taught.
How many movies that we love? Is there an extra 15 to 20 minutes of padding because you have 5 different chase scenes through the woods? Look, we love these movies, but you don't have to pad these movies to make them great anymore. You're right. You don't need to have a 90-minute movie for it to be an effective and scary movie. For it to be a well-told story, it doesn't have to hit a certain time limit before, if you'd had another 10 minutes, this would have been a great story. It doesn't work like that anymore. And before we get started on your first horror movie, Gemma, something you just said as a really nerdy person, I do want to say this has the best credits scroll at the end that I've ever seen. That credit crawl at the end is brilliant. I fucking loved it. I'm watching, I'm like, oh my God, this is the credits. Yes, that's incredible. I love this.
Yeah.
Was that Brenna's idea, Jed, or was that Rob's? Brenna's our editor. She's amazing. She's been nominated for like a Biffa and stuff like that. But sorry,
I think it was Rob's actually.
Okay.
But it's just about making something authentic, and you can't have proper credits in a found footage movie. If I was, I know the film's perfect. But like, if I was to change anything, or it would be right at the start to have the Shudder logo on Haley's screen and not just appear as a frame,
But
because
think about this. Think about how nitpicky that is. That in
oh,
order to
extremely.
pick a part of the film, you have to go to the opening credit.
Yeah.
That's how great this film is. That's the impact it has. Even as writers, you know, obviously you wrote it, so it's your baby. You know, I have 3 kids. Could I pick my favorite? Of course, it's the youngest. But at the same time, I'm kidding. But at the same time, it's like, you know, even writers, you're your own biggest critic. So for you to go out there and say that the worst thing in your own opinion is the opening credit crawl, that really speaks to the story, because people don't understand that I'm not by any means on your guys' level when it comes to writing, performing, but I'm always my own worst critic, always. And I think everybody that's really true to their craft and really proud of what they do, I think they're always their own critic. And so for you to come out and say the worst part to me is this, that's brilliant. That's amazing to me, because it shows how truly, truly proud you are of this project. And the proof's in the pudding. Look at what it's doing. This
but the problem is, Ken,
gotten 50
the problem
views
is, did
on
we
YouTube.
really write it though?
well, there's multiple problems there. So like, we have to give a lot of credit to the cast, because it was like semi-improvised. Like all of the good dialogue is the girls. We just kind of gave them the tools to make it. Yeah, but also the other problem is, how are we going to top this? Like first film out of the gate, it's one of the in the top 30 movies of all time. It's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Unheard of for a horror movie. The only way is down now. Like,
don't say that. I would, our next, but we can't really talk about the next film, but it's just been shot, so hopefully people like it as much.
Yeah.
Any updates you have? I do weekly updates. Any updates when you can finally start talking about it, let me know. I'll be happy to promote anything I can for you guys.
It's just different from Host. It's just very different, and we have to make something different from Host.
Sure.
We have to keep pushing the boundaries, and especially in the UK, where horror is kind of a bit of snobbery towards horror, and I think a lot of the horror filmmakers in the UK are very frustrated, and they're very disillusioned with just even trying to get films funded. So the fact that we've made Host is hopefully is a little bit of a kind of like a lighthouse in the darkness of the British film industry, and fingers crossed. So if we just keep doing it, if we keep making bangers, then it's only going to strengthen the British film industry's view towards horror. And if that's all we do, then it was worth it.
Well, you threw a perfect game on your first attempt. Like you said, it's going to be hard to top this, but I have all the faith in the world that you guys can top it. I don't want to say top it, because that would say that I think you guys can make something that's just as widespread known as Host. Topping is going to be something that I hate saying, because it's saying there's something wrong with this one, so you can do better. I don't want to say that, but I want to say that I believe that you guys can carry this train and carry the momentum onto your next project for sure.
Well, just quickly on that, like the 3 Blumhouse movies, they're going to be more widespread, because with Host, it's a very niche platform it's first released on. Now obviously it's got a wider release. We didn't have a trailer or a poster when it came out. It was that under the radar. But for this next one, it's going to get a wide release. It's going to have a trailer. It's going to have all the stuff that Host didn't. So it'll be seen by more eyes in general. I mean, Host maybe overall in the next 10 years will be seen the most, but I feel like the next one will be seen by more eyes straight away, which will be interesting. Yeah.
My interest is already peaked.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Well, we talked about the past. We talked about the future a little bit with what you guys got going on. We talked about the right now with Host, but now I want to take it back to the past. I want to see where all this started out for you. The first horror movie that you ever watched. Let's start with you, Jed. Your first horror movie was
Evil Dead 2. Yeah, and like, I don't really remember if it genuinely was my first, but it's the first that I kind of remember. Shall I just go and talk a little bit about it?
That's awesome. And what about you, Gemma? Your first one was?
Like Jed, it might not be my first one I ever saw, but the Blair Witch Project was the one that first really resonated with me and was like, made me like, oh, horror movies. This is something I want to like see more of and rewatch it. So.
And that's another good one, because like I said, that's especially for being your first and not knowing like, oh, what's going on here? Is this something real? Is this something? Because that's what we all thought when we first seen it. You know, I remember standing out in front in Sarah Tuckerman's front yard, smoking a cigarette, thinking I was cool. Like, Yo, I heard about this Blair Witch, man. That's real. People died, man. Like, so, I remember these feelings. Do you guys? Let's start with you this time, Gemma. Do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
Yeah, I was. Well, I wasn't. I was 11, so I wasn't standing outside someone's house like smoking about this. Like, hey, you read about this? Kind of thing. No,
I was show my age now.
Yeah, I was definitely like, it was that kind of, I was at that kind of era, like turn of millennium, where all those kind of movies were coming out, like Scary Movie and Blair Witch and whatever. And yeah, it would have been on like a sleepover with my female friends,
right.
Just like quaffing popcorn and wearing face like mud masks before you've even got acne, that kind of age. But yeah, I really just remember just thinking like, wow, this is, I don't know what maybe it was something about it, just we were talking about earlier, authenticity. It just felt real. Like I believed it. I believed this was real. And I was quite like an over imaginative kind of kid as well. And I think I just took it all a little bit too far. Like, I used to like prank my friends with it and try and make them believe that the Blair Witch was like haunting them. Like I even made those like stick figures that you've got behind you when we were on like, I don't know if, you don't have the equivalent of this. We've got something called Duke of Edinburgh Awards in the UK. I guess it's like Scouts, where you go on like hikes and things out in the woods. So like I did that with my friends when we were a bit older. And yeah, I just like, was like banging on their tents at night and like making like all the like the stone things outside their tents and things like that. I just like, it just really got under my skin. And yeah, so it made me a psycho apparently.
What about you, Jed? How old were you the first time that you remember seeing Evil Dead 2?
So the first time I saw the video box was in Blockbuster, and this is when I was a real kid, looking in Blockbuster, looking at all the videos, and I always tried to, because my mum didn't really understand the certification system on films, so sometimes I got away with like getting an 18 out when I was like 9-10 years old, but I didn't get it from Blockbuster. But I saw the video cover and I was like, oh, I need to watch that. But nobody I knew in school knew horror films. There was one kid called Raphael who I wasn't really friends with, but he was the only other guy I knew talked about horror. So one day, and I must have been about 9 or 10, I somehow got speaking to Raphael, who again wasn't really my friend. He was just kind of like the weird kid who used to bring in swords into school, like toy swords into school. It's weird. And somehow got stuck with him on something, and we started talking about horror movies. And you do the thing you do when you're kids, and you pretend you've seen a bunch of horror movies. So I'd seen Nightmare on Elm Street from a distance, like I was in the same house as Nightmare on Elm Street was playing in another room, but I wasn't allowed to watch it, so I'm not counting that. But what I heard was enough for me to say to Raphael, I saw Nightmare on Elm Street, and I tried to kind of give him the storyline based on me hearing it from 3 rooms over, and just the sounds. And I was like, and this scary guy comes, and he's got, and I think I said he had like nails as instead of razor, he had like nails coming out of his fingers, and he was stabbing people with it. And I was just making it up. And then we kind of started to become like a bit of a duo in school, talking about horror movies. And then he had an older brother, which I didn't have. And his older brother was relatively cool. He was like the first one to have internet and things like that. And he stole Evil Dead 2 from his brother. And it was a really terrible copy. I think it was like a 5th generation copy, like copied off of something else. And he was like, do not show this to anyone. Like, put this in your bag. Don't show any teachers. Don't show your parents. And I was like, oh my god! And it felt almost like it was porn or something. And I got home, and we only had like one VCR. Now I've got like 20, but like we only had one VCR. So I had to wait till my parents went to bed. Had to fake go to bed, like put it up, go to sleep, and like
really,
yeah. Exactly. And then I had to wait till they went to bed, settle down for about half an hour, and like stuck into the lounge, like close the door, turn the lights off, put the sound down on the TV before you put the video in.
Yep.
And then I started watching it like in almost in
so
secrecy,
sneaky,
with like one eye on the door and my ear like waiting to see if they wake up. So it was really low, and I was watching it. But while I was watching it, I was like, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen."
Mm-hmm.
And it was mostly because I didn't know films like this existed, because I was really in, like I've said on another podcast, my mum because she's from Philippines, she believes in real monsters. She believes in like werewolves and creatures and stuff like that. So that was instilled it into me that monsters were real. So watching a movie where there's a guy that kills monsters essentially, and it's funny as well, I just couldn't believe it. I just really couldn't believe it, and it cemented my kind of like love for horror.
I totally agree. And this is one of those movies where I absolutely love part 2 over part 1. I think, honestly, I think Evil Dead 1 is the worst one in the franchise. And a lot of people give me hell for that, but I really do. And real quick side note, I just want to say, I think the best part of the story is hopefully somewhere out there, Raphael is watching this and he's like, that motherfucker, I thought I was his friend this whole time.
Oh, no.
I haven't seen him since I was a kid, to be honest. Raphael Martinez.
As you were saying that, I was thinking, like, what if by some chance he watches this and he's like, oh man, my friend Jed, I'm gonna have a bunch of people over to my house to watch Jed talk about the first time we watched a horror movie. I know he's talking about me. And then you're like, yeah, there was this guy. I wasn't even really his friend. I just knew him. And he's got a whole bunch of friends with him. Like, shit.
He looks down at his Jed and Raphael tattoo on his hand, and he's like, right,
laser. Got a Polaroid of you two together. So Gemma, let's go back to Blair Witch real quick. Which scene from the Blair Witch Project affected you the most?
Oh my God. So, I mean, there's the really iconic ones that everyone, you know, probably thinks of the first time they think of Blair Witch. You know, you've obviously got the, you know, she's crying thing, and then there's the thing with the guy in the corner. But I think the one that really frightened me and really got under my skin, especially as like a kind of 11-year-old or whatever, was that moment when they're all in the tent. I don't know what point in the movie it happens, maybe the midpoint, I'm not sure. They're all in the tent and you hear like the banging on the tent, and it's just like, oh my God, there is something out there. And they all like run out into the, you know, the thing. And she's like, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? And it's just like the most like, I don't know what it, I think it's more, because the thing about this film is because you never see the witch, everything could almost be explained, right? Like, you know, are they pranking each other? They're always kind of like, similar to Host, interestingly, they're always like blaming each other. Like, whose fault really is it that this happens? Is it Heather's fault that they're all out there? Is it the guy's fault for throwing them out? You know, is it the guy who goes missing who's like pranking them? I'm not quite sure. Like, you know, but I think from like an 11-year-old's perspective, like being in your kind of like, you know, your forts, you're safe, you're under the blankets, hiding from the monster that might be standing in the middle of your room, and it really just kind of resonated on a very kind of base like fear level, which I think is what horror is so good at. You know, it just brings you back to being a kid, you know, and as we're saying, we were kids when we saw these films for the first time. So
and just
I like the fact that you
what
brought
Gemma
up
said there. I'd say just touch on what Gemma said there. The fact that I've lost my train of thought now.
Oh no.
It's a really good point as well. Keep going. It'll come back to me.
Being afraid of horror, it takes you back. Tense. Never mind.
No, it was a really good.
I like the fact that you brought.
I've got it now. So the comparison to Host is good because in both films you don't actually see anyone die. You see the lead up to it, but you don't actually. There's no like gore really. Besides, I mean, you see Caroline, but like it's kind of cartoony, and you don't actually see her die. And I think it's really interesting because it's all in your mind. Everything that happens is in your mind, and that's your mind is the most fertile ground for like horror.
No, but you're right. What I agree with there is, and even the end, you guys both end on an amazing note with Blair Witch and Host, and that's something I want to talk about. That ending of Blair Witch, not Host, but you just brought that up a little bit when they walk down and you see the guy just standing there in the corner, and then you know the camera falls and there's that little bit of shaking, and at that point you're like, what the fuck just happened? How did this end like this? What could possibly have just happened? And then you never know. And I think that's brilliant. I think it's brilliant. And I think it really ties into how Host ends, which again, if you guys want to know, click the links down here in the description, check it out. So what about you, Jed? We're talking about Evil Dead 2. Which scene affected you the most?
I think the scene that's the most kind of influential to me is one of the classic scenes where Ash cuts his hand off. He gets infected with the deadites who bit it, and it becomes possessed, and then he almost have like a a real like slapstick comedy scene where it's trying to get him, he's fighting it, and everyone's played that out in the school playground. Like your hand becomes possessed, and then he chops it off with a chainsaw, and then he tries to shoot it with a shotgun, and then he captures it in a bucket and puts some books on top, and one of the books is a farewell to arms, and
Yes.
like, I didn't even know what that meant when I first watched it. I was like, oh, okay, that's just a made up book. So like, I just thought it's just the perfect it's just the perfect run of like action, and it's just inventive, and it just pushes itself farther than you'd ever think a film would, or at least I did when I was like 10. And I just think nothing like it's still one of my favorite films of all time. It's in my, if you go on my letterboxd, you can put 4 movies as like that represents you, and Evil Dead 2 has been it since I had a letterboxd account. Yeah, so that in particular just blows me away, just the sheer inventiveness of it.
When you were talking about how slapsticky it gets, I think Evil Dead 2, and I'm going by the original trilogy here. Evil Dead was, just a horror movie to me, and then Army of Darkness was more of a sci-fi comedy. Evil Dead 2 had that perfect balance of horror and comedy, but it wasn't done terribly. Like when he's shooting his hand and it's running around and it gets caught in the mousetrap and he laughs at it and then it flips him the bird, you're like, that's something that it gives you a genuine laugh the first time you see it. It's something you almost see it coming, but just to see this, severed hand giving him the bird is just so funny to me. I love that every time I watch it.
Yeah.
Was it scary, Evil Dead 2, when you first saw it? Like, because I watched it, like, because I saw the first one, which did feel like a proper horror movie, and Evil Dead 2 is almost like a parody of itself, right? So when you first saw that when you were like 11, Jed, were you like petrified, like thinking these things were real? Like, what was it like?
No, not really, no. I think I was desensitized to like creatures and monsters from a really early age. It was just inspirational to me, and the fact, obviously, in later years you learn who Sam Raimi is and who Robert Tapper is and who Bruce Campbell is, and you realize that these guys are just a bunch of misfits who maxed out their credit cards, drove into the woods together, and just made a film because they love movies and they love horror. And it made me think, okay, it isn't just like people who live in the clouds who make in ivory towers who make movies. Anyone can make a movie. Anyone can make a movie this good if they just have the passion and a group of friends around them. And I think that ethos was carried on through to Host. Like, it's basically what we did, except for we didn't use our own money, thank God. Maybe we should have actually. Maybe we should have used our own money.
So, Gemma, I want to bounce back to you real quick. We talked about which scene affected you the most from the Blair Witch. What is your favorite scene from the Blair Witch Project?
Oh God, I mean, it's probably it is probably that classic iconic one where she's like apologizing to the camera, where it's, I don't know if they meant to shoot it. I mean, Jed, you probably know, like, if that weird angle where it's all up and you only see her eyes and she's like all the bogeys again.
I'm so scared right now.
The only direction they gave was just shoot yourself. They didn't tell her how to shoot it, so that was just all Heather Donahue.
Did she improvise that monologue?
Yeah.
It's so good because she's really just like apologize. She's just like, this is my fault. Like, I'm sorry to like your mom. Like,
I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Dad.
Like,
so good.
Yeah.
And it was all just like, I pushed it too far. And it's weird that I mean, it's been a while since I've watched. What do you mean?
Because like, if like I'm a Blair Witch, like,
so it's
obsessive.
Heather's fault in your head. Tell me, go on.
It genuinely is. If you go back and you read her diaries, you can buy a book with her like diaries. She's been planning this for 2 years, like in the lead up. She knew all about the mythology. She kind of knew what she did. She dragged these other 2 guys into it, like even though she knew something weird was going on. So she had a lot more information than she let on. And like, I'm obsessed with like there's a book called The Diary of Rustin Parr, who's the guy who went into the woods and built that house that the Blair Witch lived or is in, because he used to take kids back there and kill them and stuff. And the mythology is so rich and amazing, but we only see a snip of it in Blair Witch Project.
But that's what's really interested me, because when I was 11-year-old, like all that beginning, that whole intro section where they're like interviewing people, like really just like went over my head. And I don't think I was like, when's it going to get scary? Like, I wasn't really paying, like, what's the boring old man saying? Like, by the time, for the first time I saw that movie, by the time you see the person standing in the corner, like, I'd forgotten that they'd like kind of tee that up right at the beginning. Instead, like, they did that. It meant nothing to me. I was just like, Oh my God. But yeah, I think in answer to your question, it was that scene with Heather taking responsibility for it, because like how often do people take responsibility in horror movies for like causing
accountability is non-existent in horror movies.
So hey ho.
So what about you, Jed, with Evil Dead 2? What's your favorite scene from that movie?
My favorite scene is, and again, this is spoilers, but I feel like everyone's watched Evil Dead 2, is actually the whole end sequence where you find out that Ash was the person that were written about in the Necronomicon, and he was the people who destroyed the Deadites back in the 13th century, and then you see this time portal open at the end, and he goes through it and he lands in it like the 13th century and surrounded by knights, and you just think, oh my god,
so ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. But then, like, Jenny, like, I don't know if you've watched Army of Darkness yet, but it continues on from that point.
Oh my god, you're joking.
Basically. No, yeah,
it's the biggest smile on my face.
It's the medieval dead. It's the medieval dead.
That always got my favorite scene from Evil Dead 2, and I don't think it'll ever change, is when he's having that nervous breakdown, and like the head looks over at him and starts laughing, and then he's at the lamp and he's doing this with the lamp, it's going up and down, and then they all just start busting up laughing, like And then a scene that I've always appreciated from Evil Dead 2, and I think just because it's so over the top, is when she opens up the cellar door, and it almost looks like fruit punch, how it's all bubbly coming up at her, the blood coming up at her. That's another scene that I always just thought was super fun to watch.
Yeah, they obviously got that potentially from like Kubrick from The Shining, maybe.
Yeah.
And then he used that again in Army of Darkness, where it's a similar thing, Jem. There's a pit with like a monster in it, and
someone in the pit.
and someone goes in there, and there's a beat, and then there's just like fountains of blood going up into the sky, like. It's incredible.
It's so joyful.
Yeah. If you go in, you got to go into Army of Darkness knowing there's no horror elements to this movie. Army of Darkness is strictly a sci-fi action adventure comedy. But you definitely got to check it out.
Stop motion skeletons. It's great. All it needed was a song, and it would have been perfect. But you get to see Ash working in a supermarket as well in S Smart, which I love.
Shop smart, shop S smart, baby. Well, and he's from Michigan. That's me, Michigan boy.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah.
So you gotta love it. So one question I ask that I don't let you guys know that I ask, because I always want a genuine answer. Let's start with you, Gemma. We've talked about the first horror movie you watched and what it meant to you, but now I want to go scream on you here. What's your favorite scary movie? What is your favorite horror movie?
My favorite horror movie. I mean, freaking hell. I think Blair Witch is really high up there. That's the thing. It was that kind of age where you're really like getting your thing. But to be honest, it's interesting you use the Scream mask, because another movie I was really obsessed with and still kind of am at the time, without having seen Scream and knowing any of the references, was Scary Movie. Like it's horror comedy. I know. I just I've seen that movie like 10 times, like, which is really, really probably quite lame. But I just genuinely like bloody loved it. And maybe it was just like you feel safe. I don't know, or you're laughing along with all these horrifying things and they make me feel better. But to be honest, otherwise it's probably Blair Witch is probably the first and my favorite movie of all time, horror movie of all time.
I get it. That's me with House. It's my first and my favorite. So what about you, Jed? Let me go back here. What's your favorite scary movie? What's your favorite, Jed?
Sex and the City 2 is straight up there. But besides that, I want to cheat and have a couple, because I don't know if you consider it horror, but my favorite film of all time is a horror film. It's 1984's Night of the Comet. Now, I don't know if you've seen that, but I think it's on Netflix in America, but it's basically about a comet that passes over Earth, kills everybody except for these two valley girls. So these two kind of like teenage girls in LA, and there's zombies everywhere as well, because it turned most people to dust, but if you're only slightly infected, you just get zombified. And you think, okay, this film's going to be about these two girls, badass girls, killing zombies. They go straight to the mall and start looting it and shopping and having dancing to girls just want to have fun. And I'm just like, this is what would happen. People would just go to the malls and loot the malls and just get everything and then think about killing these zombies. But I'm properly obsessed by this film, and the humor, and basically like some of the dialogue is influenced Joss Whedon when he made Buffy the Vampire Slayer. One of the
Okay.
girls from it, one of the girls from it, Kelly Maroney, she plays like a badass teenager who kills zombies, and he said like, yeah, it's the biggest influence for Buffy. And then a couple of years ago when I was in LA, I interviewed Kelly Maroney for a podcast, and she was like, hey, if you want to hang out when I'm in LA, and she's like, yeah. So I got to hang out with her, and then I was there in January 2019, and with a bunch of my friends as well. And I said, and Kelly was like, "Oh, like let's hang out again." So we all went to a bar, and she brought Catherine Mary Stewart, who's the other girl from Night of the Comet. So I got to hang out with the two leads from my favorite film from Night of the Comet, and it was insane. It was brilliant.
That's so rad, man.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with it. And it kind of influences everything I do as well. Just because the dialogue is so good. But if I'm going for a straight up horror, there is only one really for me, and that's Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street is the daddy of all horror movies.
What's he getting? Here we go.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah, because the and I will say this to Rob when we're coming up with like ideas, like what you need for the best horror film is the best horror villain, and that's Freddy Krueger. You literally cannot, if you had a million scientists working on the best baddie for a horror movie, they wouldn't come up with anything as good as Freddy Krueger. And the reason why, it's not because he's got like razor blades for his hands. It's because with normal serial killers and monsters, you can hide from them, but you can't hide from sleep. You have to sleep, so he will always get you because you're human. So your biology conspires against you essentially, and so he's the scariest villain because you cannot hide from him ever. He will always get you, and I think that's terrifying. And if like I've spoken to actually maybe I should say, but I've spoken to studios who are considered quite art house, and you think their films are very arty, and they've said to me, all we want is our Freddy Krueger. We want our own Freddy Krueger because, because if you have a Freddy Krueger, you've set your company up for life because you can just keep making film after film after film. Because if you've got a strong enough villain, you don't need anything else. Like that carries the entire movie. No one's watching Nightmare on Elm Street Part 6 for one of the guest stars, and you're watching it for Freddy Krueger, and that's why the Nightmare on Elm Street remake failed, because the Freddy Krueger they had isn't authentic to the original, and so
Jed,
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Can I ask you, if you weren't scared of Evil Dead 2, were you afraid to go to sleep after you overheard Nightmare on Elm Street through the door? Like, or do you not get scared?
No.
Do you get scared at horror movies?
I tell you what, the only piece of media that's ever really scared me and affected me is Ghostwatch.
Yes, we haven't talked about this.
Yeah, which is a big influence on Host. I don't know if you've seen it, Ken, if you've seen Ghostwatch, but it's a British found footage film strokes like one-off TV series. And what it was is the BBC in the early 90s, they had a Halloween special where they were in a haunted house, and it was live for a couple of hours, and you got to meet these people who live in there. And they just kept the cameras rolling it, and you basically see a family be terrorized, and it doesn't end well. And it felt so real because they used real British presenters, and it was meant to be like a documentary format. And it got so many complaints from the BBC because people thought it was real. And because when I watched it like years later on a bootleg VHS that I bought for eBay. And because the BBC had banned it and it wasn't released properly in home media, I was just like, this is real. This has to be real, because it had like people in it that I knew in terms of like famous presenters.
And you said it's called Ghostwatch?
Mm-hmm.
Ghostwatch, yeah. And I think it's the biggest influence for Paranormal Activity as well. I think they've admitted that, and maybe even Blair Witch Project as well. It came out in 1992.
I can't imagine anyone in America would have seen it. It was so obscure.
Yeah,
I got it written down now so I can check it out.
you're gonna love it.
We've
It's
definitely
on
ripped it off a lot
Shudder.
in Host, but
Oh yeah. And in Host, in fact, the Zoom ID right at the start, the first frame you see, the Zoom ID is 31101992, which is the air date for Ghostwatch.
Oh, that's awesome.
nice little
Yeah.
Easter eggs. There's loads of Easter eggs in Host. People
Yeah.
would say.
Well, it's funny you say that because I have an Easter egg during my intro that I'll tell you guys once we are done filming. But every single one of my intros has the same Easter egg in it, so I'll fill you guys in on it. But before I let you go, we always end these with the same question. I always end with a skull count. What we do is we rank. Jed, you'll be ranking Evil Dead 2. Gem, you'll be ranking the Blair Witch Project on a scale of 0 to 5 skulls. Now, this is not about how great the movie is. This is about how it affected you, what this movie means to you. That's what I want to rank it on. So, Jed, let's start with you. 0 to 5, Evil Dead 2.
So for those that follow me on Letterboxd, which you really should, I don't give anything more than a 4. Like 4 is my highest mark. So for Evil Dead 2, I'm giving a 5 because it's better than every other film there is. So it has to get a 5 in terms of what it's kind of meant for like me in terms of like the kind of films I want to make. It's the best. And obviously, like myself and Rob are working with Sam Raimi. I don't know if you know that we're doing a film with Sam Raimi as well, and we wouldn't be so excited about it if it wasn't for the facts like he made these films.
Congratulations, man. They always say never meet your heroes, but man, I've met so many people, including you guys on here, that I'm such a big fan of.
Oh,
and
thanks.
When you're in this horror community, everybody is so genuine and so kind to each other. And it makes it so much easier to approach you guys. And 2 more of my huge heroes I'll be filming with on Friday. So it's really
Who's
cool
that?
to be able to get James A. Janice and Chelsea Rebecca from Dead Meat.
Oh, I love them. Yeah, I love those guys. Yeah.
So do I. And those are 2 big influences on me as well. They're 2 very kind people, and it's just so excited to be able to work with them as well. So
say hi from us, from the host guys.
Oh, I absolutely will. I promise.
Yeah.
And it's something that just don't lose this genuineness that you guys have, because it's so fun and you guys are so easy. Even when I reached out to you via email, Twitter, it was such a quick response and such an easy response, and it meant a lot to me. And us people in the horror community, I've never met a bad egg so far. And
oh, thanks.
It's true.
It makes it really good.
I'm quite new to this whole horror community thing. I mean, Jed, you and Rob have been doing this for like years and years, making horror shorts. But like for me, I was just like, oh my God, everyone is so nice. Like and I don't really use Twitter that much until this year either. And it's just like, oh, like people are just like want you to like, make good stuff, and they like watching it and telling you and being involved. And it's just such a wonderful, especially during lockdown, it's been such a wonderful joy to have this opportunity.
I think the difference is with horror movies, it's definitely more of a lifestyle. I mean, and this is something I've said many times, but you don't get rom-com con, but you get horror con.
I always say this
that's
as well.
How much it means to us. People will, spend hours and hours and hours creating themselves to look like Freddy Krueger, and then they'll go wait in line for 2.5 hours to meet Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead.
But do you know why this is? Do you know what this is? It's because we have to try harder. We have to be louder and try harder than everyone else, because people still look down upon horror. So we have to be our own cheerleaders, and hopefully, exactly. Yeah. And you're right. The support is great. Is amazing. People genuinely want you to do well, because if one person does well, we all do well.
Everybody does.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's so cool talking to you guys about it and hearing, like me talking to you guys, that's like you talking about Sam Raimi, somebody that you've looked up to, that you're getting to work with. And it can seem so insignificant to Sam Raimi, but to you, it means the world.
Probably,
you guys
actually,
come on this podcast, may seem insignificant, but I love it to death. So
got a meeting with him tomorrow, actually. Got a meeting with him tomorrow. I've got a meeting with Sam tomorrow, actually.
I bet he's going to sleep tonight going, wow, I get to meet Jed Shepherd again tomorrow.
It's Christmas Eve for him too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So what about you, Gem? Blair Witch Project, 0 to 5 skulls. What's your ranking?
Oh, I mean, it's the same as Jed. Really. I'm one of those people who's just like, well, I can't say it's perfect because nothing's perfect. But for me, really, it is like 5 stars,
isn't it?
Definitely, for sure. There's no wiggle room there. Also, weirdly, it's an R-rated film, which I did not realize.
Is it? Oh.
Yeah, because of the language, I think.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
which is really
I think
strange.
they say
to think about.
fuck like a couple times too many for it to get the PG-13.
Yeah, but like nothing happens. You don't for a film you literally see nothing. But no blood, no gore. It's all in your head. But five skulls.
But it's one of those things. Like, if that movie was released right now today, would it get an R rating? You know,
No,
in comparison to what it was then compared to what it is
rating
now.
did Host get?
You know,
I don't know.
In the UK, 15, I think, which is, I guess, the equivalent of PG-13.
I think that would be PG-13 here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like The Ring is like a 12A, and that film just killed me when I was that age. I don't think I should have been able to see that.
You don't see anything in The Ring, though. You don't see anything in Ring.
Well, that thing with the like, you know,
but it's just like a frame. You barely see it. Yeah.
I know exactly when she's like, when they're at the funeral, she's like, I saw her face, and then it cuts to the
I thought she was going to kill me. I thought Samara was going to kill me after seeing that film. I'm so nervous and scared of everything. Jed's too cool.
Well, we showed.
I get freaked out over everything, but I love it so much. It's that shot of adrenaline. I absolutely love it.
We showed Blair Witch Project projected from VHS in my VCR onto a cinema screen in October at a cinema called Genesis Cinema in East London, and it was like completely sold out, and it was great to see people watching the Blair Witch. Some people for the first time. We asked beforehand who's not seen this before, and some people put their hands up. And to see it on VHS as well is like great. And we also screened The Ring as well, and we screened it from a VHS. And obviously, that is one of the kind of like the main things in Ring.
The graininess.
So, yeah. Oh, it was great. And also that day my VCR wasn't working very well, so there was this weird pink unnatural tinge to the entire thing, and it just felt like this was the cursed copy of The Ring. It's like, oh my god. It was great.
That's amazing. I do again want to thank you guys for coming on. Don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. I got all the social media links down here in the description, so make sure you're giving them a follow. As always, guys, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.
Happy spookies!
Happy spookies!